You think you'll hit anything with that stance? The drill instructor roared with laughter as the slender figure stepped forward. The entire group of recruits burst into laughter, some pretending to stumble backward, clapping mockingly. Others whispered cruel jokes about her size, her hesitation, her silence. "Look at little Mouse trying to play soldier," one recruit sneered. "Maybe we should get her a toy gun instead," another added. She said nothing, just raised her hand to adjust her position. Her sleeve rolled up slightly, revealing a crimson wolf tattoo wrapped around a dagger. A major standing behind suddenly stopped breathing, stepped back and whispered, "That's a crimson wolf mark." The laughter died instantly. Even the wind seemed to pause. Her name was Sophia Reeves, 29 years old, Scandinavian, blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun, lean build, pale skin, steady eyes. She was the newest recruit in the marksman training program at Fort Blackwood. From day one, she spoke little, always arrived early, cleaned weapons for the entire squad without being asked. The team called her Little Mouse, or the Silent One. But there were other things about Sophia that the recruits noticed and mocked. She never joined them at the mess hall, preferring to eat alone outside. She never complained about the brutal training schedules, never asked for help, never showed frustration. When others groaned about early morning drills, she was already there, stretching silently. When others cursed about equipment malfunctions, she quietly fixed them without drawing attention. "She's probably never even seen a real weapon before," Martinez, a cocky recruit from Texas, often said. "Bet she thinks this is summer camp." The others would laugh, not knowing that Sophia heard every word, absorbed every insult, and filed it away with the same precision she used for everything else. During the first exercise, Sophia didn't shoot, only asked to observe to better understand wind patterns and breathing techniques. A drill instructor said bluntly, "If you're scared to pull the trigger, why did you even enlist?" She only nodded, saying softly, "I've fired before, but I don't want to repeat it unless I'm certain." The others laughed loudly. "Shot what? Tin cans in your backyard?" But something about her stillness made the laughter feel hollow. The way she handled the rifle, the precise way she cleaned each component, the methodical checking of scope alignment. These weren't the movements of someone who'd only held sporting rifles. When she observed, her eyes tracked targets with mathematical precision. She calculated wind speed by watching leaves move. She noted humidity changes affecting bullet drop. She studied the range like she was memorizing every grain of sand, every blade of grass. During physical training, while others struggled with the obstacle course, Sophia moved through it with an efficiency that seemed almost mechanical. No wasted motion, no unnecessary effort. She wasn't the fastest, but she was the most consistent. Day after day, same pace, same technique, same quiet determination. The other recruits began to notice strange things about her, how she always knew where everyone was without looking, how she could tell when someone was approaching from behind, how she seemed to catalog every sound, every movement around her. But instead of being impressed, they found it unsettling. "She's like a robot," one recruit whispered. "It's creepy how she just watches everything." "Maybe she's a spy," another joked, not knowing how close to the truth he was. "Why aren't you shooting?" asked Captain Torres, the head instructor. "Because," she said quietly, "I need to remember why I stopped." The other recruits exchanged glances. There was something in her voice, not fear, but something deeper, something that made the training ground feel suddenly colder. She spent hours after training sitting alone, staring at the targets downrange. Her fingers would trace the wolf tattoo absent-mindedly, as if remembering something she wished she could forget. Sometimes, other recruits would see her lips moving silently, as if she were talking to someone who wasn't there. The recruits' mockery grew crueler as days passed. "Maybe she's waiting for the targets to apologize," Martinez would say loudly enough for Sophia to hear. "Or maybe she thinks this is meditation class." Others joined in. "Hey, Mouse, you gonna shoot today, or just keep staring?" "I bet she's afraid the gun will hurt her shoulder." But Sophia never responded. She just continued her routine, arriving first, leaving last, maintaining everyone's equipment with obsessive care. She cleaned rifles that weren't even dirty, checked equipment that had already been checked, organized supplies that were already organized. It was as if she needed to keep her hands busy to keep her mind from wandering to places she didn't want to go. One recruit, a young man named Parker, noticed that she always counted things: bullets, targets, steps to the firing line, always in groups of 7. He mentioned it to the others, who added it to their list of reasons why Sophia was weird. "She's definitely got issues," Martinez declared, "probably washed out of some other program, and they dumped her here." One evening, Captain Torres found her cleaning rifles in the dark. "Reeves, what are you doing?" "Making sure they're ready," she whispered. "Ready for what?" She looked up, and for a moment her eyes held something ancient, for when someone needs them to work perfectly. CTA Comment Act 1. Have you ever seen someone skilled being underestimated? Type truly unfair. During a live ammunition training session, they forced Sophia to go first, even though she hadn't fired a single shot yet. The other recruits gathered around, some placing bets on whether she'd even be able to hit the target. $20 says she misses completely, Martinez whispered to Parker. "I'll take that bet," Parker replied, "but I say she'll be too scared to even pull the trigger." The instructor shouted, "1 bullet only. Miss it and you're out." The recruits cheered, thinking they were about to witness Sophia's humiliation and subsequent departure. She said nothing, just gently wiped the rifle barrel with her cloth. When adjusting her stance, her sleeve lifted slightly. A drill instructor suddenly noticed the crimson tattoo, a wolf wrapped around a dagger, with the wolf's head carved with CW7. That instructor, Sergeant Williams, was about to scold her about getting tattoos to look cool, but Major Harrison, observing from afar, suddenly approached, his eyes wide with recognition. He bent down to look closely, his face going pale, then stepped back half a step, whispered to the instructor, "Stop!" She was in Crimson Wolf. The instructors were horrified. Sergeant Williams whispered, "But Crimson Wolf was disbanded after the Sierra operation. No one survived." His hands trembled as he said it. He'd heard the stories, the legends, the whispered tales of the unit that operated in the darkest corners of the world. "She survived," Major Harrison said, his voice barely audible. The training ground fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Major Harrison's face had gone pale. He'd been a young lieutenant during the Sierra campaign, the classified operation that officially never happened. He'd read the after-action reports, seen the casualty list marked KIA, body not recovered. He'd heard the stories from other officers who'd worked with Crimson Wolf, stories that kept grown men awake at night. Crimson Wolf wasn't just any unit. They were the ghosts who operated in places where regular forces couldn't go. Urban warfare specialists who could disappear in plain sight. Each member was worth a platoon, trained to survive in conditions that would break normal soldiers. They were sent on missions that didn't exist, to places that weren't on any map, to do things that would never be acknowledged. The recruits sensed the change in atmosphere, but didn't understand what was happening. They saw the instructors step back, saw the fear in their eyes, saw Major Harrison's hands shake as he stared at Sophia's tattoo. The betting stopped. The jokes died. Suddenly, the training ground felt like a different place entirely. "How many were in your unit?" Harrison asked quietly, his voice carrying the weight of someone who already knew the answer would hurt. 7, Sophia replied, her voice barely audible, each word carrying the weight of memories she'd tried to bury. "And how many came back?" She looked at him with those calm eyes, eyes that had seen too much, survived too much. "You're looking at her." The other recruits had stopped laughing entirely. They didn't understand the significance, but they could feel the weight of it, the way Major Harrison's hands trembled slightly, the way other instructors had unconsciously stepped back, the way the entire atmosphere had shifted from mockery to something approaching reverence and fear. Martinez, who had been so cruel with his jokes, now stood frozen, his mouth slightly open. Parker, who had bet against her, found himself unable to meet her eyes. The other recruits who had spent weeks making fun of Little Mouse suddenly realized they had been mocking someone whose shoes they weren't fit to tie. "The CW7 on your tattoo," Harrison continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's your unit number?" "No," she said simply, her voice carrying a pain that made everyone present feel like they were intruding on something sacred. "That's how many I couldn't save." The silence stretched unbearably. In the distance, a flag snapped in the wind, the only sound in a world that had suddenly become too quiet. Someone coughed nervously. Someone else shifted their weight. But no one spoke. No one dared to break the spell that had settled over the training ground. Captain Torres, trying to regain some semblance of control over the situation, cleared his throat. "Reeves, you still need to take your shot." Sophia nodded, but something had changed in her posture. The hesitation was gone, replaced by something that made the seasoned instructors take another step back. She approached the firing line with the same measured steps she'd used for weeks, but now everyone watched differently. She positioned herself, and for the first time her movements looked different. Not the careful, hesitant adjustments of a beginner, but the fluid, automatic motions of someone who'd done this thousands of times under pressure. "Ma'am," called out one of the recruits who'd been mocking her, "what was Crimson Wolf like?" She paused, rifle halfway to her shoulder. "Quiet," she said. "We were very, very quiet." CTA Comment Act 2. If you've ever misjudged someone, type "I was wrong." Major Harrison ordered the training class to halt. Who gave the order for her to shoot first? The entire class remained silent. Harrison spoke slowly. "She doesn't need training. She once saved me at Firebase Delta with a shot from nearly 800 meters. I never saw her face, only knew the tattoo." Sophia stepped forward. She looked at him calmly. "I didn't save you. I just did what was necessary to get the whole team home." Harrison raised his hand in a strict salute. All the recruits and instructors stood speechless. But Sophia wasn't finished. The memories were flooding back now. Memories she'd spent 4 years trying to suppress. "Firebase Delta was supposed to be a simple extraction," she said, her voice carrying across the silent training ground. "Intelligence said 1 hostile sniper. We found 14. Major Harrison's face went ashen. He remembered that day differently. Remembered being pinned down, his communications specialist dead, ammunition running low. "You were trapped in that compound for 7 hours, Sophia continued. "Second floor, southeast corner. You had a shoulder wound, kept trying to call for backup on a damaged radio." "How could you possibly know that?" Harrison whispered. "Because I was in the water tower, 792 meters away. I watched you through my scope for 7 hours, watched you bandage your shoulder wound with your belt, watched you check your ammunition count 19 times. The training ground was so quiet you could hear heartbeats. I took out 9 hostiles before you even knew I was there. The 10th one, he had you in his sights when you tried to move to the stairs. That's when I took the shot, you remember." Harrison's hands were shaking now. "But our intelligence said—" Your intelligence was wrong. It wasn't 1 sniper. It was a coordinated ambush. They knew you were coming." She turned to face the recruits who'd been mocking her for weeks. "You want to know what Crimson Wolf was like? We were the unit they sent when everyone else was already dead. And that we were the ones who went in after the official missions failed." One of the recruits, a young woman named Martinez who'd been particularly cruel in her jokes, spoke up. "But why didn't you tell us? Why let us think?" "Because," Sophia interrupted, "the moment you start believing your own legend, you're already dead." She walked to the firing line. For the first time in 4 years, she raised a rifle with purpose. "Major Harrison, you said I saved you with 1 shot. That's not entirely accurate." The rifle cracked once. Downrange, the target split perfectly in half. "I saved you with shot number 347 of that day. The first 346 were practice." She fired again. The second target, positioned behind the first, also split in half. "In Crimson Wolf, we had a saying, the best shot is the one no one remembers because everyone lived." A third shot. A third target, nearly invisible in the distance, fell. "But sometimes," she said, lowering the rifle, "sometimes people remember anyway." CTA Comment Act 3. If you've ever been saved by someone you never got to thank, type "I owe a debt." Sophia didn't continue the training course. She left the base the next morning. On the shooting table was an M4 rifle, cleaned to a mirror shine, and a folded red cloth. A small note read, "No further training needed. Just remember why we pick up rifles in the first place." In the shooting range, a group of students placed a small photo frame, Crimson Wolf. They never shouted, but when they fired, no one forgot. But before she left, Sophia did something unexpected. She asked to address the recruits one final time. They gathered in the barracks, these young men and women who'd spent weeks mocking her, now sitting in complete silence. "You think this is about shooting," she began. "It's not. It's about the weight of responsibility. Every bullet carries someone's son, someone's daughter, someone's future." She looked at each face in turn. "When I was your age, I thought being a marksman meant being special, thought it meant being the hero of the story. But heroes don't hide in shadows for 18 hours waiting for one shot. Heroes don't carry the faces of people they couldn't save." Martinez, the recruit who'd been cruelest, raised her hand. "Ma'am, how do we become like you?" Sophia smiled for the first time since arriving at the base, but it wasn't a happy smile. "You don't," she said simply. "You become better. You become the version of me that saves everyone, the version that comes home with all 7 teammates." She stood to leave, then paused. "And you remember that the person sitting next to you, the one you think doesn't belong here, might be the one who saves your life someday. Treat them accordingly." After she left, the recruits found that she'd left something else behind. Detailed notes on each of their shooting techniques, personalized advice for improvement, and a training schedule that would push them beyond anything they'd imagined. At the bottom of each note was the same message: "You're better than you think. Prove it." Captain Torres kept those notes. Years later, when recruits asked about the legendary Crimson Wolf who'd briefly trained at their base, he'd show them the notes and say, "She didn't come here to learn. She came here to teach. We were just too stupid to realize it." CTA Comment Act 4. Type, "I will live kindly," if you believe the best people never brag about who they are. There are people who don't need to shoot to prove anything, because they've already shot in places no one dares to remember. Sophia was a Crimson Wolf, a unit that was never officially recognized, but every tattoo is living proof. Never laugh at the quiet ones. Never laugh when someone cleans your rifle for you. Maybe the person you're mocking is the one who'll save your life on the hardest day. Live kindly, and never look down on people just because they don't show off their titles. The real warriors are the ones who carry their battles silently, who clean weapons they hope they'll never need to use again, who remember the weight of every shot they've taken. They don't need applause. They don't need recognition. They just need to know that when the moment comes, they'll be ready. And sometimes, just sometimes, they need to know that the people they're protecting are worth protecting. Remember, the loudest person in the room is rarely the most dangerous. The most dangerous person is usually the one sitting quietly in the corner, hoping they never have to show you why they're so quiet.